Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast, bringing you another amazing guest. His name is Mr. Ryan Dohrn. It is spelled Dohrn. And we're going to talk about how sales has changed. Not just sort of changed, but really changed. And our relationship building in the sales process is actually changed, where he has something called selling flip forward, where the relationship is built on the front end, but the majority of the relationship is built on the back end. Because today, people can access information so much more than they could in the past. Now, that's really important to understand that, because a lot of people are not, they're not intolerant, but they have the information already. And, it's going to now change our discovery process a little bit and shorten up our sales cycle and shorten up the time of meeting. So let's go talk to Ryan and get your pen and paper out. Here we go. Ryan, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Doug. Always love the opportunity to talk sales, especially with somebody who knows the business. It's great.
Oh, you're too kind. You're way too kind. I appreciate it. It's so we're going to talk today about what's different now, right? In sales. I mean, we're October 2022. We're recording this. We've all been through this pandemic. We've all been through this crazy up and down with recessions going on, and sales has changed. Really, the way I would say sales hasn't changed, but the way we must communicate selling has changed.
You bet.
So, so we're going to talk, I'll speak for myself, an old guy, right? How do you teach an old, sales guy a new trick, or an old sales gal, or whatever it might be. And so how has sales changed from, let's say, even 3 years ago to now?
Yeah, what's the biggest flip that I've noticed, Doug, and I have the opportunity to, coach and work with a couple hundred salespeople every month, and it's gone from tears to joy to tears to joy, kind of back to tears, and then with economic uncertainty in the air, whatever that means to folks, without getting into politics, with economic uncertainty and the pandemic just a little bit behind us, one of the biggest things that I have noticed is that we've just flipped a little bit on the relationship sale. It used to be that I would form a relationship with somebody through the prospecting process, try to form some level of a relationship, albeit it might be a little bit superficial, build a relationship, sell somebody, retain them for a lifetime. Now, what I've observed is that the relationship piece being in front of the sale is not as important. It still needs to exist. But what I'm noticing now is that people will buy products or services, then you service them, you build the relationship, and then you retain them for a lifetime. So there's just been a little flip. Now, I've been criticized pretty heavily online, even in some of the book reviews, on people saying they don't agree with me that relationship selling is dead. Hold on. I didn't say relationship selling was dead. I just said that it's flipped. So I'm working with folks all the time now, and when I'm selling them something, I'm realizing they kind of want just three things. Like right now, they want to know, how much is it? Who else has tried it? And oh, by the way, how much is it? They just don't really want the runway, if you will, or all the preamble in advance of it. And I think one of the biggest things also that happened is people learned to buy without ever talking to salespeople. We had so much time to research and do our own due diligence. Whereas before COVID, we were just running like crazy all the time when we never slowed down. And so now people, they had the time to research it during COVID, and they realized, hey, I don't need to meet with Ryan or Doug in person because I can do it on Zoom. So the relationship piece, I think, is the biggest thing, Doug, that has just flipped. It's not the relationship selling doesn't exist. We're just building relationships after the sale to retain them for a lifetime, as opposed to this big runway that was needed before building the relationship before the sale actually occurred.
That makes a lot of sense to me. In fact, a lot of companies now are doing massive research before they ever even talk to the sales channel. So before, it used to be, the old way, the salesperson would be interruption marketing, if you will, the cold call, whatever. And it's not that cold calls don't work still, they still work. It's just now we have to be far more credible as sellers than we were ever before, because like you said, Ryan, the pandemic has allowed people to step back and now take a look, and they can get information anywhere. I mean, just Google it or Bing it or whatever you want to, to do, right? And so what's, even with myself in our company, what surprised me is people now, they go and check out who I am before they talk to me.
Correct.
Which, 4 years ago, they'd be like, whatever, right? Even on a referral, like now on a referral, if you had a referral 4 or 5 years ago, it'd be like, yeah, I trust this other person. This is fine, blah, blah, blah. I'll talk to Doug whenever I talk to him.
Correct.
Now what they're doing is they're saying, hey, I see you wrote an article in Authority Magazine, or I see you in Forbes, or I see you here. I checked your LinkedIn profile out. You went to Berklee College of Music. It's surprising to me, Ryan, how many people like cue in on Berklee College of Music. It's like, I've got a nuclear medicine degree, I've got this degree, but it's always about Berklee.
Right.
And which is wonderful, right? That I had that opportunity. But the point is they're checking me out. They're checking the company out. They're checking people out in my company. On top of that, they'll say, hey, I noticed this employee here, also had a degree from this place. And that never happened before to me.
Right.
But now it's become so much more of a process.
Indeed. And I think Harvard Business Review wrote it best. And it's a little bit of a phrase called quick trust. So what you're doing is you're building a quick trust with folks instead of this big, long relationship. Now, I remember, and you may, in the sales process, when we would wine and we would dine and we would take people to dinner and ball games and things like that. And what I've observed now, and it's not because I'm 50 selling to people that are 30. That's not what it's about. As a matter of fact, I think that folks younger than me are actually easier to sell to than folks over the age of 50, because we're all jaded, and callous from this war of sales. I had a gentleman in New York City, big Yankees fan. He was younger than me. I had an opportunity to get 4 Yankees tickets, and he was a prospect. I invited him to a ball game. And he said, no, very politely, no, thank you. That I just appreciate it, but no, thank you. And I kind of sensed that he wanted to go, but maybe just not with me. And I said, hey, I'll tell you what, I'm more of a Cubs fan. So let me just give you these Yankees tickets, go with your buddies. All I would ask is in the next couple of weeks so we could have a little time together and just talk about your business. He's like, yeah, absolutely. That would be great. I earned the business. I earned his trust. Here's what it came down to, Doug. He just didn't really want to go to the game with me. Right. And it kind of hurt my feelings at first. And then I just realized, Ryan, you just kind of need to suck it up. We're living in a little bit different world. People don't want to try to build these big relationships. Like they don't need more friends right now. But the process to me was very enlightening in that I'm a nice guy. Didn't want to go with me. Stop taking it personal and just realizing that things have flipped a little bit. Sell them smart, sell them right. Make sure you make it easy for people to buy. And maybe we can talk about self-service sales in a second. Make it easy for them to buy. But then the other piece of it is build that relationship after the sale. You don't have to have this big, long runway in advance of it. And that's why I heard somebody on a podcast the other day, the most important question to ask is, what's your budget? Well, I mean, is that really the most important question to ask? Is that the top question that's on every prospect's mind? And I don't really necessarily know if that is true. That kind of sounds old school sales to me.
Well, I think that's a very important question if you're playing win-lose.
Correct. I agree with that 100%.
Because the reality is most larger sales, they don't have a budget already. Budgets are created. Mm-hmm. And so budgets are created out of opportunity. Budgets are created out of finding problems, right? So when we're coming in and doing what we've done our whole lives, which is solve problems or help opportunities along, if we're doing that, then budget sort of works itself out anyways. No one wakes up in the middle of January 1st and goes, well, maybe 2 people out of the world wake up and they go, you know what? I'm going to appropriate a budget for this. That's going to happen in July. And I don't even know it's going to happen. It's just going to happen. Right. So we'll just slide $130,000 this way, just in case something comes up in July. They don't do that, right?
No,
So
it doesn't. It doesn't work like that. And I really feel like one of the things you shared briefly about is just this whole idea of people researching and people looking you up online. LinkedIn is like 70% of the time somebody will look you up on LinkedIn before a meeting. Yet when you go to LinkedIn, and this could be one of your listeners' big takeaways, when you go to LinkedIn, like the pictures are outdated. It looks like a resume. Nobody can really get a glimpse into your soul of who you are.
right.
Things, along those lines. But the other thing I noticed, Doug, is self-service sales is just so unbelievably important. And what I mean by that is Doug's ability to come to Ryan's website and basically get about 70-80% of the way towards the purchase without ever talking to Ryan.
Right.
And a lot of older school sales folks would say to me, well, that's why we have a job though. Well, we do have a job, but if you're an advisor, and I like the word you just used, help, if you're somebody that's helping along the journey, if you're an advisor and a helper, you recommend stuff. If you're a salesperson, you sell stuff. So self-service sales is something that every CEO at every company should be thinking about. When someone comes to our website, how far down the journey can they get actually without us? Because that's what they want. I was trying to buy a learning management system, and I'm looking to get a new one. Almost every website that I went to, you had to put in your first name, last name, serial number, date, rank. It was like ridiculous, just ridiculous budget. These forms to fill out. You couldn't even get pricing, feature sets you could get. There wasn't testimonials. There wasn't videos. So what I did is I just kept going, Doug, until I found somebody that had a website that would self-service me to a point where I'm a smart guy. You're a smart guy. We should be able to get about 70% down the road before we ever have to talk to a salesperson. And I'm a sales guy, so I'm not trying to dog on salespeople. But tell me what your thoughts are on self-service sales, because it's not something that everybody does.
Well, before I do that, let me plug this. We're speaking with Mr. Ryan Dohrn, and he is at ryandohrn.com. And we're talking about how the world of sales has changed. And now we're going to talk about self-service sales. And I love the fact that you've even coined this self-service sales, right? Because here's the weird part. When we look, you and I have talked to, I don't know, collectively, maybe 10,000 plus salespeople, right?
Right.
And maybe more. And here's the weird part. When you talk to them, they're always complaining about marketing leads, right? There's this when you look at three categories of a lead, marketing produces a lead, which basically says, now marketers don't yell at me, but hey, this person expressed interest and they have a pulse. That's kind of a marketing qualified lead in most marketers' worlds, right? That we got something to build a relationship off of. Then you go to a sales quality lead, which says, hey, this person has a pulse. They've, looked at this. They have these 2 or 3 qualifications. They're in the right, demographic, the right psychographic, whatever. And salespeople like those better than marketing qualified leads, because you can now sort of do more of a discovery process versus trying to just build the relationship on the front end. But what really salespeople want, and the majority of them, well, I'm going to say all of them, what they really want is purchase order ready leads.
You got it.
Right? It's like,
yep.
Hello, Ryan. It's nice to speak with you. My name's Doug. How many of these would you like? I see you want, that's what they want.
Right.
So when you're talking about this self-service ready process, what you're talking about is creating a purchase order ready lead before the sales channel talks to them. Right. But oh my gosh, it's like, so I'm on the same wavelength that you are. I have battles with clients all the time because the cost of doing that sometimes is more than just passing those leads off to the salesperson. But when you look at the sales conversion rates on the back end on these non-ready leads, and you start factoring in all the money they're spending in on marketing on the front end, it's actually more cost effective to get them sales purchase order ready leads if you do it the right way. I have a gentleman who was on this podcast, and he's got a SaaS product. And he's doing exactly what you're talking about, Ryan. He's given everything up front, and he built a significant size company. This is his second one, This company now is growing at twice the rate as original company did when he didn't do that.
Right.
So I think a lot of people are afraid to do that because they think they're going to give so much information that the potential buyer is going to look at it and go, well, I'll take all this to my competition and shop it out.
Right. Right.
And in the reality, what we're doing is we're building a relationship, but we're building it through technology. We're building it through information and expertise. Then when we're talking with them, then we're developing the relationship.
Yep. Agreed.
And
agreed. And
go ahead.
And I'm seeing folks using video in the process.
Yeah.
I'm seeing folks that are taking people through an actual sales call, but it's on demand.
Yep.
Because when I'm going in on a sales call with somebody and I'm on a Zoom call, I know what I want out of that sales call. Very rarely do I get on with a client or prospect and they don't know what they want out of that call. That's why a part of my process is at the very beginning, here's the 3 things I'd love to cover on the sales call. But how about you? What would you love to cover? We've got so many salespeople that are just showing up and throwing up. They're just pulling out their slide deck. They're forcing people through the deck. So much of that can be done before the sales call occurs. Like, for example, let's just say I'm not concerned about an app that's a part of a SaaS product, just as an example. Well, you spending time on the app is not important to me because I don't care about the app. What I'm concerned about is the SaaS part of the product and how does it work? Let's just say you're concerned about sharing with me the billing piece. Well, I'm not concerned about the billing piece because I don't touch that. Janice over here is going to deal with billing.
Right.
I want to be able to go in the self-service sales environment and go, okay, tell me about how content is uploaded. Okay, show me a video on that. How does it impact SEO? Show me a video on that. It allows me to really customize a sales call for me instead of having to walk through what you think is the best sales call that's out there. And I also would suggest to you, Doug, I think 60 minutes is now 30. I think 30 minutes is now 15. I believe if you can't really sell your product in a highlighted way, unless you're building a rocket ship in 30 minutes or less, I feel like something in advance of that sales call hasn't occurred. So many times people are requesting a 60-minute meeting. Well, do you really need a 60-minute meeting? A lot of cases, the answer is no, but that's what we've always done. So why are we doing 30-minute meetings or 45-minute meetings? Well, we've always done 60. And I think if you keep doing it the way you always did it, you're probably going to get the result that you always got. And if we want something different, or we want to survive or thrive, we got to do things a little bit differently. And I'm not suggesting, nor are you, anything that's crazy or wacky, or it's just a matter of just kind of flipping a few things, doing things just a smidge differently, and getting out of our hole, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think here's a point that I think you and I would agree but disagree on, right? On longer meetings. So I think it depends on what we're selling.
Fair enough.
I think the more complex the sale is, what I have found, it's usually a need for a longer sales cycle, right? Because then you're bringing more and more parties to the sales process, like, IT's affecting, HR's affecting. And by the way, and I've told this so many times on these podcasts, those of you who want to be in the top 1%, do not show up one person to an 8-person meeting. You better bring people who are like peers to peers. Right. And that's what I think drags out the meeting time, Ryan, is you've got, if they've got an IT person at the table, you better have an IT person at the table, because as a sales channel, we're going to say something that IT is going to go, and write it down. And then after the meeting, they're going to go to the CEO and go, do you realize this is going to cost us an extra $50,000 and blah, blah, blah. And the sale's dead at that point. Right. But on a whole, I'm in a full agreement with you. We can shorten up our meeting time. And I think a lot of times salespeople do this longer meeting time for their own self-interest, right? They're like, hey, I want to be accepted. I want to be needed. I want to be whatever, right? In that regard. And I don't think that serves the client, because like you just said, look, when you were looking at a SaaS product, you wanted X, Z, and M in the alphabet. That's all you were interested in. Right. Now if somebody's renting a car or buying a car and they want to go functionally from point A to point B, it gets them there safely. And those are their 3, I just want to be able to get in the car every day. It starts, get to the location, and I want to be there safely. Talking about heated seats and XM radio and, all the bells and whistles that come along with this car is really breaking rapport at that point. So when you're talking about self-service sales, which I love the name of self-service sales, what we're talking about is being able to pull down a la carte things that are important to that person. that compresses the ability for us to compress our time.
Right.
And therefore you don't need those long meetings if it's done correctly.
Yeah, fair enough. And sometimes the 30-minute, I like to suggest, hey, I might say, Doug, could we get together 15 or 20 minutes to talk about this? If it goes longer than that, it goes longer than that. Maybe on my calendar, I'll block out 60, but I only have 15. But the other thing that I like about shorter meetings is, let's say, Doug, that you have a meeting with me. I'm the sales guy. You're the client. You have a meeting with me this morning. Your calendar pops up and you go, oh, I have a 60-minute meeting with that joker. I don't have 60 minutes today.
Right.
I've got stuff to get done. A 15, 20-minute meeting is a little micro meeting. You go, fine. I'm not going to cancel it. So right. I've noticed when I go from 60 to 15 or 30-minute meetings, about 50% of the time, not quite 50% of the time, you get stood up for meetings of new prospects. I've noticed it's almost none. I always have the meetings. Sometimes in 15 or 20 minutes, it's over. Pretty quickly if you have got a client or not, if you have a half a brain. And if it goes to 60 minutes, it does. If it goes to 90 minutes, you cancel something and it does. Right. But I just feel like from a strategy perspective, asking for 15 or 20 minutes to gauge somebody's level of interest and excitement for you and the product is super fair. It allows you to book more meetings and not have as many no-shows as well.
I agree with that. And there was a gentleman on this call, not on this call, but on this podcast, and very successful man. And he said on the podcast, he said he limits meetings to 5 minutes. And so all internal meetings are 5 minutes. If you can't come into his office and say what you can in 5 minutes, what does it mean to have a half an hour, right? That type of thing. Right. So right. I started adopting this in my own personal life and it works. So my wife and I, we've agreed now, anytime we have a disagreement, it gets resolved in 5 minutes.
Hey, that's great. That's a whole nother book right there.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. We could write a book on this. Right. Right. And it works amazingly well because what happens is it cuts out all the emotion out of the, if we have a disagreement, it's like, it cuts all the emotion out of it. It's like, okay, what's the solution to the problem? Well, let's remove the cause of what's got the solution. Got the problem in the first place, right? Because you never solve problems by solving solutions of problems, no matter what people think. You remove the cause of the problem, then the problem goes away. Right. So if we practice ourselves, and I love what you're bringing up, because again, here we teach people how to be in the top 1% of sellers and earners worldwide, right? If we can go and do 4 appointments that are as effective as 1 appointment. Now, what we essentially have done is we've seen 4 people versus 1. We can compress our meeting time, spend more time on prospecting, and therefore generate more sales as a result of it. Yep. And so how does somebody go about, Ryan, creating this, process that we're talking about? Because people listening to this, some of them are going to go, wow, that's brilliant, right? All right, how do I do it?
Yeah, the first thing is, you want to slay the small dragons first, I get a little bit of hate mail on this, because there's kind of a book do the hardest things first and eat the frog or eat the toad, whatever the book is. Good book about doing the hard things first. I feel like that takes a lot more budget and a lot more time. And so I like to just slay the small dragons, is what I call it, first. And that is, look at the things that are the easiest for us to fix, because everybody's already got a website. So it's not about building a new website. And slay the small dragons first. All right, what are the 3 most common questions that we get from every stinking client? Like on every single call, we always get these 3 objections, or we get these 3 questions. Then create a little video, if you will, to answer those as a part of the sales process. When someone goes connect with us or book a meeting or pricing or whatever, begin to walk them through the process of what are the most common questions that we get asked. Maybe the CEO is answering the question. Maybe it's a sales rep that's good on camera answering the question. But better would be a client of yours. Maybe you give them a little deal. Maybe you pay them a little on the side, whatever it is, to get them to explain how your product or service fixed or answered that particular question. Social proof is so important for us to have in the sales process in setting this up. Social proof is your customers talking positively about you. Testimonials with a photo that shows who the person is and how your company, your product, your service, or whatever changed their life, fixed a problem. So slaying those small dragons is about, I really like video because I think it's telling and people are willing to watch. I do a lot of video in my email replies, a lot of video in the sales prospecting process. But on self-service sales, they need to be able to go through and say, oh, my question is this, click on that. My question is this, click on that. And when you walk them through the video piece of the process, starting with something small first, then I think you're going to have less questions on the call itself. Right. And also, to your point, it will disqualify some people. Now, I had a gentleman the other day say, well, when you let them disqualify themselves, what if they do it wrong? That just has not been what I found out. What I found is that people will self-qualify or they will disqualify themselves pretty accurately. And sometimes it's price, sometimes it's a feature set. But if it's a point of misunderstanding, that's kind of on you, because you should know where those points of misunderstanding are.
I agree.
So that's where I would start, is with the smallest, easiest things, and just add those videos to your page. And then the second thing is stop with what I would like to refer to as just these long freaking forms. We just need to know, hey, what's your first name? What's your email address? What's the best way to contact you? And then I maybe would want to know, do you want somebody to call you right now? In a couple of weeks, you just considering it? What are you kind of thinking? And let them give you that information. But you have to give, and this is so important, you have to give an immediate promise of gratification. When you ask for someone's data, which other than their bank account, their God, their kid, their spouse, your data is so important. When you're asking them to not give you funkymonkey@gmail.com, when you want a legit email address, right? You need to give them immediate gratification, immediate promise. So it needs to say, Doug, if you give me this bit of information, I will immediately send you pricing, immediately give you access to this, immediately give you access to that. There's nothing worse, in my opinion, than filling out a form and it says, thank you for filling out the form. Ryan will get back to you in the next 48 hours.
Exactly.
Like, oh my gosh, it's 2022. We're better than that. So that's really, Doug, a long way of answering a simple question of kind of where do you start? Start with the easiest stuff first and use videos to explain.
So video is extremely important now in search engine optimization, and search engines love video, and keep them short. That's the other thing too, right?
Agreed.
Under 2 minutes, if
sure.
at all possible.
I'd rather have 10 short videos than one really well thought out video that's 15 minutes long. I think I agree with you. Maybe even 90 seconds would be fantastic. Just get to the point.
Yep. And now you expose my email address of funkymonkey@gmail.com. So
yeah. Now, if you're going to be emailing people things from your form, you want to give them a reason not to give you that Gmail, Hotmail, iCloud, iMac, Mac.com address. So a lot of times I'll say to folks in those forms, it'll say, we're going to immediately email this information to you. Please provide a business address. Sometimes you can even go so far as to say at Gmail, at Hotmail, whatever, not accepted, or something along those lines. Or you could have your form kick that back out. Please provide a valid email address, a valid business email address. When you build a form, you can have rules in the background. My forms, when you try to give me a Gmail address, it's going to say, please provide a valid business email address. Because otherwise I am giving away the information to them and I don't have a good lead, because Gmail just means they want the price and they're not serious.
Well, I will argue a little bit on that one too, because I have a lot of $5 million businesses that that'll send in their Gmail address. And
is that right?
Yeah. So because what they'll do, like I even have one, anybody wants to email is dougb5069@gmail.com. Right. So if I don't want because what we're worried about is we're going to get spammed to death on our business emails. Right. So what I'll do is I'll send that out first, then I'll change it. So I think it's kind of like, I agree with you. You want as accurate information, and it depends on your screening too, Ryan. Like if you're like, look, this is my process and I only work with people who do this process, then that's a great qualification tool. Correct. Right. And nobody wants a Hotmail. Who even uses Hotmail anymore, or AOL, right? I mean, right. There's some like legacy people that are using it, but most people don't even use it any longer. But I found that a lot of people will, including myself, will use a spoof email just to see if it's legitimate, because nothing drives me crazier than when I send like something out And then they're just hitting me with stuff, and I'm getting 14 emails on this every
Yep.
single week. And I'm like, please remove me, please unsubscribe. And they don't, right? And it just
Correct.
keeps filling
Yep.
up. So I think there's a
Yep.
little bit of gray in that area that we could
Yeah.
look at.
Yep. Sure enough.
And the one thing I love about you is, and you said this to me right up front, is like, look, if you don't agree with something, tell
Yeah.
tell me, right? And so,
No.
um,
Yeah, I'm with you. And when you actually walk people through the self-service sales process, and you really answer their questions with videos and things like that, I find that you build a certain level of trust with them,
trust, yeah,
and you are more likely to get a valid email address. The other thing you can do, to your point, which I think is a good one, for people not wanting to give their valid email address and give a Gmail or Hotmail or whatever, is just to be able to share with them a promise. So under where they click submit, our promise to you, we will not spam you. And then the marketers within your group need to recognize and understand, no matter what they've heard at the last conference they went to, people are not going to accept. I heard a guy say people will accept 4 to 6 emails per week before they unsubscribe. And I just wanted to raise my hand and say, listen, this isn't because I'm 50. This is because I have a brain. No one agrees with that, sir. Nobody in this room agrees with that. So don't anybody write that down. That's a bad piece of advice.
I've had people say I'll send 3 a day because they won't read them anyways. And I'll just give my name. And it's like, when we're dealing business to business, especially, if you try sending 6 emails a week, you're going to lose the deal.
Fair enough. You can only poke the bear so many times, poke the gator so many times before you're going to get your hand bit.
Yeah.
And it's happening all the time. I just had a very excellent, I thought, sales call with a client. And for whatever reason, they put me in their system, and I started getting emails back from them. And I thought, what in the world is going on?
Yeah.
So they say a good email address is worth $1,000. If that really is the case, they say, it's kind of like Confucius say, they say it's worth $1,000. And if it is, let's treat it like it's worth $1,000.
Right.
And I'm just not a big spam marketer. I just, or a text spammer in the sales process. I feel like it's a little more sacred than that. And I believe most of my clients respect and appreciate the processes we put in place because we don't spam the heck out of them. And I think that's important.
Yeah. If one's sending too many emails, it really becomes kind of like, let's say you live next to a highway and you're just hearing the noise all the time. You start to drone, it starts to get
Correct.
less and less and less in your brain as you go along. So when they're seeing 30 emails a week coming through from people, they're like, oh yeah. And they're not even reading them. And they think,
Right.
well, the impression. Well, that does work, but
Correct.
But what we're really looking for is a response today. And it's so easy just to hit unsubscribe, ladies and gentlemen. It's just so easy. So
yeah, fair enough. And in the marketing process of getting good sales leads, unfortunately, folks are not changing fast enough to that. To use your road highway example, if you lived in the middle of nowhere and didn't get any traffic, and that one car came down the long road, now all of a sudden you are really paying attention to it. And so I believe that people just become quite numb to the process. Also, keep in mind during COVID, I don't remember the exact number, Doug, I don't have it in front of me, but it was something along the lines of a 500 some odd % increase in email marketing.
Right.
And that's why now direct mail I just worked this through with a client, 4.2% ROI response rate, response rate on direct mail, because during COVID, nobody sent anything. Right. We were getting nothing during COVID, except for emails over and over again.
Right.
So I also feel like the marketing side, which is really not what we're talking about today, but the marketing side of the business needs to get on board with the changes that have happened. Because if you're in B2B and you're trying to market on social media, I'm telling you right now, it's a lost cause. There's so many better ways to market your product than social right now. And interestingly enough, I see so many of my customers going back to traditional forms of media, because you're not banging people over the head all day long. People are just tired of it. And I also believe they're a little tired of the sales process. So I'm glad we're talking about it.
Yeah, I think it has its place. It's great from a branding perspective. I think people check out what you put out there if you put out quality stuff.
I totally agree with that.
Somebody who's posting every single day, just, pitches of whatever, in a B2B context, not right. No, if you're 20 years old or 18 years old or 22 or whatever, I see, like my daughter looks at, kittens every single day. Somebody puts out a new kitten, right? And she just loves that. So that's cool. And it draws her to it. So there's an appropriate time for that. But if we're selling, I don't know, laser guided machines to companies that are, throwing out kittens every day is not going to help. It's not. It's okay once in a while,
right,
to do something like that. And humor is always good, but stay away from religion, politics, and spousal jokes, right?
Yeah.
But
the kitten sales strategy. Yet another book that we should put together.
So Ryan, let's do this. So we're speaking with Mr. Ryan Dohrn at ryandohrn.com. That's DOHRM.
You got it. N.
N. Sorry.
That's okay.
DOHRN.com. Check him out. It's like flip selling forward. It really is kind of the concept of this whole thing. Ryan, anything, last parting words? How do people get a hold of you? That's something I didn't ask people.
Yeah, for sure. So I'd love to speak at sales conferences. It's one of the things that I do most, is come in and motivate, inspire teams. My license plate in my car says motivator on it. I love talking about that. So yeah, just hit me up over at ryandohrn.com. And we do all kinds of weekly updates over on YouTube as well. So just search for Ryan Dohrn and I'm sure you'll find it. One of the things that I'm also been speaking about a lot, talking with folks a lot, especially for CEOs, is rethinking how we incentivize and how we compensate folks. Incentivizing positive sales behaviors is something that really hasn't been done in the past. Doug, as we grew up through the sales world, it was always kind of a carrot in front of us. Here's the carrot, here's the commission that keeps us going. What I've really noticed is a lot of clients of mine moving salespeople to a salary with a bonus, not necessarily commissionable per sales. But what I've noticed is also a lot of folks incentivizing positive sales behaviors. Let me give you a brief example, and maybe it's something for another show we can talk about. Incentivizing a positive behavior would be one of the biggest problems in sales with sales managers, CEOs, et cetera, is getting your salespeople to put notes in the CRM. People don't like using CRMs. They just don't. Now, I'm a big CRM fan. I love CRMs. Super important for me. But if you don't incentivize people in a positive way to use the CRM, a lot of times they don't want to use it, don't use it, or they use it with a lackluster attitude. So I'd like to always talk about and put in place incentivizing positive sales behaviors. It might be, for example, the person with the best notes this week in the CRM, and I'm making this up, is going to win a $75 Amazon card or a $100 Amazon card. Or I'm going to go through and whoever is following the sales process the closest in the CRM is going to get to work from home on Friday, or is going to get a $300 dinner for, you, your spouse, partner, whatever. Incentivizing positive behaviors, creation of proposals, getting people to respond quickly, making sure that people's proposals look right, their slide decks are perfect, they're well rehearsed. All those things are beneficial. But if we don't incentivize people to do them, unfortunately, they just don't typically do them, or they're lackluster at best. So that was one of the things I wanted to make sure I shared with you and with your listeners and viewers, is that I'm seeing a big trend towards incentivizing positive sales behaviors to get somebody to do the job better, as opposed to the only incentive being after the sale is done.
Yeah.
Incentivizing up front, and also, hey, pay me when I sell as well. But that incentivizing in advance, I think, is a very important piece, because it helps keep people happy. And when people are happy, they tend to sell better and sell more. So I'd like to put those kind of plans, in place as well. And it's been working quite well.
It's a great tip. And for anybody who's got a sales team, do it now, because that makes it measurable as well. And when we're measuring performance and behavior, we know process is working, and so, or not working, and then you can correct that process throughout. So Ryan, I really appreciate you being here. I know everybody else is. Thanks for bringing the A game. Thanks for putting up with me. And love to have you back. I'd love to do a show on incentivizing positive sales behavior. I think that would be awesome. Any parting last words for anybody?
Well, you really just want to make sure that you're making changes to your sales game, even if you're doing quite good right now. Let's go from good to great. Let's go from great to superstar status. And friends, always be open to new ideas that are out there. You've got folks like Doug and I that have access to hundreds and hundreds of companies. And when you get some advice from people, get a coach, get some coaching outside of your bubble, you'll almost always discover something that you'll go, oh my gosh, I knew that. Why am I not doing that? And I think that's really one of the beauties and benefits of your show here, Doug, is you bring people on, listen to folks, be open to new ideas, because when you're open, you can grow. And I think that's important.
I agree. Thanks again, Ryan, for being here.
You bet. My pleasure.
Okay. Well, I got a lot to unpack here. Building the relationship on the back end requires something called follow-up. And Ryan and I didn't get a lot into follow-up, but your follow-up should be multimodality, and it should be something that is inspiring people to at least consume it. Now, we did talk a lot about using video on the front end. Now, video is really cool. Keep those videos short, though. Even if you look at YouTube, they do something called YouTube Shorts today. It's under a minute. Why? People's attention span is not that long anymore. This long tail copy that people used to send still does work to some degree, but the reality is usually you're finding very simple pages where, you go up, see a video, not long, and you see very short copy. Those are converting the best, right? So social media posts, anything you're putting out there for follow-up, make it short, pithy, make it meaningful, relevant, and timely. And timely is important, right? You don't wait for 3 months to follow up with somebody because, no disrespect to you or anybody else, they've kind of gone by, right? They're onto their own day, their own week, their own month, et cetera. We all do this. Now, selling flip forward means you're building the relationship not in full like you would try to do on a golf course, go into a sports game. All that stuff still works, but the majority of people today are really trying to just consume something to buy. And so they want to build a relationship with you, but it's just built differently than it was in the past. So if you like this content, if you like any content, what you would like to hear, that was terrible grammar, but I'm going to keep it in here anyways, because now this is live. In other words, if you have a subject matter that you want to hear something on, maybe you're the expert on that subject matter, reach out to me, reach out to my team at YouMatter, YOUMATTER at ceosalesstrategies.com. Let us know if you want to be a guest on the show, or if you have some subject matter that you want to hear more about, let us know that too. We will respond to all inquiries, let you know if it works or not for the show. And if so, great. We'll do business together in that capacity. As always, go out and sell something, right? Go sell a lot of it. Sell a lot of meaningful stuff. Play win-win. And make somebody happy, make yourself happy. You'll make a lot of money. If you love this podcast, I ask you to review it. Please give it a 5-star if you feel it's worth it. Tell your friends about this. Referrals are always a part of the 1% growers' earning capacity. And the more referrals we have, the more people we can see, the more people we can help. So that's it. If you yourself want to be in the top 1% of all earners in the world in sales, if you have a friend, your company wants that to happen because you want your company revenues to grow. Or if you're a company and you're like, man, I want access to those elite performers, the people who are already trained and they know how to sell, reach out to me at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. Be happy to have that chat with you. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. To your success.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. What is something that you learned that you could act on today? Don't forget to schedule it now, or it may never get forward momentum. If you find our content valuable, please leave a favorable review and let us know what you liked. Please also share this with others if the content will help them. For our show notes, other episodes, and more interesting content and resources, please visit ceosalesstrategiespodcast.com. See you soon, and to your continued success.